My dad gave the 1.9-meter business I built. For 7 years, from scratch to my sister. The sentence didn't echo in the room. It just sat there, heavy, like something already decided long before I walked in. Dad didn't flinch. He folded his hands on the desk, the same desk I bought when the first big contract came in, and said, almost gently, "You'll work under her. She deserves it. She has kids." I remember the hum of the air conditioner, the faint ticking of the wall clock. My sister avoided my eyes, but I noticed the new confidence in how she held the pen, my pen, like ownership had already settled into her bones. 7 years, sleepless nights, empty bank accounts, risks no one stood beside me for. I laughed. A quiet, controlled laugh. I nodded like it made sense. Like I agreed. Then I stood up, walked out, and closed the door softly behind me. That was the moment they thought I lost everything. It was actually the moment I stopped playing fair. I was the quiet one in a loud family, the one who fixed things, instead of arguing about them. While my sister collected sympathy, I collected responsibilities. When Dad's first small shop started failing, I was the one who stayed after college, who learned suppliers, pricing, margins, who turned late payments into steady contracts. No one called it sacrifice back then. They called it helping out. 7 years later, helping out had become a 1.9 million business. But in this house, effort didn't earn recognition. Visibility did. My sister had that. She had stories people could feel. 2 kids, a messy divorce, tears at the dinner table. I had spreadsheets, silent wins, and a habit of not asking for credit. Dad trusted me to build but not to own. That pattern wasn't new. Growing up, if something worked, it was family effort. If something failed, it was my responsibility. Learned early that being reliable makes you invisible. You become the foundation, essential but unnoticed. And foundations don't get celebrated. They get built over. So when Dad handed her everything, it didn't feel like a sudden betrayal. It felt like the final confirmation of a role I'd been quietly playing my entire life. The only difference now was I finally saw it clearly. The next morning, my access card didn't work. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, staring at the small red light blinking back at me. Inside, I could see my old desk, now cleared, cleaner than I ever kept it. Someone had already removed the second monitor I bought with my own money. When I finally walked in through the receptionist who avoided eye contact, my sister was standing where I used to stand during Monday briefings. Same spot, different posture. She held a printed report upside down for a moment before correcting it, then glanced at me as if waiting for approval she didn't want to ask for. "Good," she said, after a pause that lasted just a little too long. "You're here. Not welcome, just expected." Dad didn't look up from his phone. "Sit with operations," he added casually. Like reassigning me was a minor adjustment. "Operations. The department I built." I nodded again. Same quiet agreement. Same controlled face. Later, I heard my sister telling someone, "He's more technical. I'll handle the decisions now." A small sentence, softly spoken. But it landed heavier than anything said in that office so far. No one corrected her. And that silence, it stretched, settled, and made everything painfully clear. The real turning point wasn't loud. It didn't come with an argument or a slammed door. It came 3 days later, in a meeting I wasn't supposed to lead anymore. A client I had secured years ago sat across the table, flipping through a proposal my sister had approved. I recognized the numbers immediately, overpriced in the wrong places, undercut where it mattered, the kind of mistake you only make when you don't understand why the numbers exist. He looked at me, not her. "Just for a second. Is this final?" he asked. There was a pause. My sister answered quickly, "Yes, we've restructured things." I felt it then. Not anger, not even betrayal, but distance. Clean, sharp distance, like I was no longer part of the consequences. For 7 years, every decision had weight, because it was mine to carry. Now the weight belonged to someone else, and they didn't even realize it yet. I didn't correct the numbers. I didn't step in. I simply nodded and said, "If that's the direction, we'll proceed." That was the moment. Not when I lost the business, but when I let it go. And once I did, I stopped thinking like an employee. I started thinking like a replacement. I didn't resign, not yet. Walking away too early would have looked emotional, and emotions are easy to dismiss. Instead, I became precise. For 7 years, I hadn't just built a business. I had built systems, Contracts structured around relationships I personally negotiated. Vendor agreements tied to performance metrics I designed. Clients who didn't stay because of branding, but because I solved problems before they fully surfaced. I knew exactly where the leverage lived, so I started quietly untangling myself. First, I reviewed my original agreements. My name wasn't on ownership, but it was on key supplier introductions, consulting clauses, and a few side contracts Dad had signed without thinking twice. Not illegal, just overlooked. Second, I reconnected with clients. Not to pull them away, just to check in, to listen, to remind them subtly who had been managing the details all along. No pressure, no pitch, just presence. Then I updated my own position. Certifications I had postponed. A dormant consulting profile brought back to life. Old contacts reactivated. People who trusted my work, not my title. I didn't make noise. I made options, because revenge, when done right, doesn't start with destruction. It starts with independence. And by the time they noticed, I wasn't building their business anymore. I was building my exit. It happened without announcement. One Monday morning, I didn't show up. No message. No explanation. Just absence. By noon, my phone lit up. First from operations, then from clients, then finally from Dad. I let it ring. Not out of spite, but because for the first time, I wasn't responsible for catching what others dropped. By Tuesday, the cracks started showing. A supplier delayed a shipment. Terms I used to smooth over in minutes. A client requested revisions no one fully understood. Emails piled up, polite at first, then sharper. Questions that used to come to me now circled endlessly inside the company. I watched from a distance, not interfering, not accelerating, just letting the system run without the person it was built around. By the end of the week, one of my long-term clients reached out, not to the company but to me. "I assumed you were still handling things," he said. "We need stability." I didn't pitch. I simply said, "I'm available." That was enough. No confrontation, no grand reveal, just a quiet shift, contracts moving, conversations redirecting, trust following familiarity. They didn't lose everything at once. They felt it slipping piece by piece. And I didn't take anything that wasn't already leaving. The call started on the third week. Not urgent at first, just persistent. My sister left a voicemail that sounded carefully composed, like she had practiced it twice before recording. "We just need some clarity on a few things," she said, her voice tight around the edges. Dad's message came later, shorter, stripped of authority. "Come by, let's talk." I didn't go. From people I still trusted inside the company, I heard enough. Deadlines missed, clients asking for me by name, then going quiet when they realized I wasn't there. A supplier tightening terms. Small fractures, but in business, small fractures spread fast. At home, the narrative shifted. I wasn't helping out anymore. I was needed. The same work that once made me invisible now had weight because it was gone. What surprised me wasn't their struggle. It was my calm. For the first time, my value wasn't tied to proving myself inside a room where it was ignored. It was measured by absence, by what stopped working when I stepped away. And that's why it matters, because some people don't realize your worth while you're holding everything together. They only understand it when they have to carry it without you. I used to think closure meant being understood. An apology, a conversation where everything is finally said, weighed and balanced. But distance taught me something quieter and far more honest. Not everyone is capable of seeing you clearly, especially if they've benefited from not having to, so I stopped waiting. I built my own work again, this time with clean lines, my name on the contracts, my terms in the agreements, my boundaries written where they couldn't be ignored. The same discipline, the same patience, but no silent compromises disguised as loyalty. Clients followed, not because I asked them to, but because consistency has a memory. People remember who solved their problems when it mattered. As for my family, we speak sometimes, carefully, politely. The weight is still there, but it no longer defines me. I don't need them to admit what happened. I already lived it. What I gained wasn't revenge in the way most people imagine. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was control, clarity, ownership of my work and of myself. And the truth is, I didn't lose the business that day. I just stopped building something I was never meant to keep.